Good Monday morning! Today we are continuing our series of unit testing. You can check out the full episode playlist by clicking there. And today we are continuing with exploring mocking. I am MPJ and you are watching Fun Function. Alright, so let's have a look at where we were last time. Let me close this window. This is the order total function that we were working on. We see here that we started a bit. We're calling fetch here. Well, it's not doing much. We also needed to start doing some response parsing here. So I think that that's what we're going to continue with. I'm also going to open up the sandbox so that we remember what we were doing here. So this is the way you do a fetch call. You call fetch with an URL and then you parse the response. In this case, we're going to parse it as JSON, and then we're going to extract the VAT rate here. Okay, so we have our fake fetch here. And what we want this to do is return the promise that resolves to response. So you see here fetch that returns a promise, and that promise resolves to this response object, which in turn has a JSON method on it that in turn will actually also return a promise that will resolve to this data here. So let's just do that actually. So fake fetch will return a promise that resolves to a response object. This is a response object, and that has a JSON method that in turn resolves to, rather it's a promise, returns a promise that resolves to, oh sorry, I switched to the wrong one, sandbox, resolve to this thing. So it's data rate standard value. Let me copy that so that can just help me here. Resolves to an object that has rates, which in turn has a standard rate, which in turn has a value, which is going to be 19, perhaps. I made a mistake here, promise.promise. I am drunk. Let me fix that. Promise.resolve is, of course, what I meant. Anyway, given this, then we should actually expect this to multiply the value of this order by 19%. Let's update the test to do that. So expect result to be 20 times 2 times 119. Let's run that, create integrated terminal and run npm test, see what we get. Should get a, I expected to get a failure, but we didn't. That's peculiar. No, actually it is not, because let me close that. I'm gonna show you the mistake I made. I'm going to slightly zoom out as well so that we can see more. So the way Jest works is that when it comes to asynchronous tests, it needs to know when the test has ended. So you can do that by having these done functions and then call them when the test is done. Let's see if that worked actually. npm test. Yeah, that worked. But that's not the way we want to do it, because it can also, instead of using this callback pattern, we can just return this promise here. It's a bit more, you know, promises are nice. It's a nice API. It's better than the done thing. So just will, cool. So these will throw an error, and that will propagate up the promise chain, which jest will then handle. It's very sleek. But either way, we have a problem here. We expected the value to be something like this, but we actually received 40 because we have no code for this. So let's see here. The fetch, let's implement this, will return a promise that resolves to a response, and response has a method called JSON that we can call, which in turn returns a promise that resolves to some data. And that data will have some rates, and one rate, that is the standard rate, and that will have a value of 19. So let's go back and implement that. Data dot rates, and it's the standard rate, and it has a value. See there. And then we will use that VAT rate, and we'll actually copy this for now, and multiply that with 1. Hang on. So we'll take VAT times. Let's just do that for a minute. We'll fix that. Won't work, but we'll fix it later. Let's just make some progress. See what that turned out to be. Cannot read property then of undefined. Where was that? Order total, line 3. Oh, we didn't get. Oh, this is the happy path. We have a bunch of tests failing now. Let's actually disable all of the tests and focus on one at the moment, because it's very nice in programming to solve one problem at a time. So adding it only to the jest means that it will only run this test, which is often very helpful. So let's see. Right, now this fails. All right, it's still just returning 40. Yeah, it's because we're not actually returning this promise here. It just makes this request, and then it proceeds to this line here, which is not very useful. So we press right return. Cool. Let's run it again and see if that helps. Oh yeah. Expected 47.59, but we received 760. That's a bit much. It's because we are multiplying by 19 when we should actually be cursing this to be 0.19. So I think that if we divide this by 100, I think that's correct. Is that correct? Yeah, maybe. Let's see. Run npm test again. No, that becomes 7.6. No, that's because we are not multiplying by 0.19. So let's actually do 1 plus 0.19. See if that helps. Hang on. Ah, yes, cool. Now we get to green, get the correct value. I keep typing npm test here, but I just remember that we actually have defined an npm watch as well. So sorry, npm run watch that will auto run every time we save. All right, so there's some duplication here. Don't worry, we will deal with that eventually. But for now, just put a pin in it. We will be removing duplication, but not until all tests are green. So let's actually let me remove the only to see the other failed tests. There are no failing because then is undefined. Yeah, and this is because in the cases we only really do this. We only really want to do this if we have a country. And the order might not necessarily have a country yet. Perhaps the user haven't selected it yet. So we want to just have an if statement here and do order dot country and just wrap this thing in that. Hang on. Wow. There we go. And now all those tests are succeeding. We have one skipped test here because I actually made a kind of dummy test here. And this is called like, I think of these as to-do tests, so to speak, because I wanted to remember this case. But it seems like we have actually accidentally solved this because we had tests breaking for other reasons. So I'm actually gonna delete that. We don't need to write that test. That is overzealous now that we have other tests that just cover that naturally. Also, I think that this empty function here, we don't actually need that anymore because it's just not making use of it. So I can just change the empty function to null, to be honest. Let's do that. So let's see, null, or the total, null, and then the empty function null and null there as well. We don't need that. And then I just delete this. So it's a bit cleaner. I feel a little bit disoriented here. With all this mocking, it feels like I don't quite know what is real. I'm skeptical. Are we actually testing anything here? Or are we just creating this fake implementation and then just testing the fake implementation? Are we actually testing any real logic? Yes, we are. I understand how it might feel like we're doing quite a bit of faking here, doing this elaborate mock or fetch. But what we are concerned about is to test if order total is causing the side effect that we want, the fetch, and that it does the right things with what that side effect yields, which is the data. So what the test is doing is we're concerned with testing order total, right? And what order total does is it causes this side effect, fetch. So this side effect comes out of order total, so to speak, and we're inspecting that this looks correct. That's what we're doing, and then we are passing a response back into order total, and then we inspect what comes out of order total after that to see that that is correct. So like request comes out, we inspect that request looks good, looks like we expect it to be, and then we pass in a response, and then given that response we inspect that, hey, we get the correct VAT out of that, or like the correct order total with VAT multiplied in. So order total is what we're testing. We're not testing fetch at all here. I'm skeptical. Does this actually work? Is this? We've written a lot of tests now, written a lot of code, but we have not actually tried it against the real API. We built it, checked it out in the sandbox kind of, but we've not actually checked that order total runs correctly against the real API. I'm interested in the fact that when you're doing TDD with mocks, it can only become kind of sort of TDD. Before we were coding like TDD with pure functions, we were like, writing a bit, and then we implemented it in the code, and we would actually see the real results because there were no side effects. It was just the pure function and our tests. But when we are doing TDD against mocks, it's just us creating a fake reality, and then we check using TDD that our tests does the right things in this fake reality. And depending on what happens in the fake reality, that the test does responds to the code responds to that in the right way. But it all depends on us having correctly designed the fake reality, which means that when we are doing any kind of mocking, we actually do have to actually test that we have made right assumptions in our test by checking this stuff in the sandbox. So let's see if we can do that actually. I'm going to import the order total. Hang on. Order total. And we require order total. And I'm gonna close this for a bit. I'm gonna start Quokka on this file. There we go. And we're gonna call order, hang on, const result. We're gonna call order total. And the first argument needs to pass in a fetch because it needs fetch. And we are going to give it some kind of order. Yes, let's steal one from this test here. Go back to sandbox. Pass in this here. See what happens. Oh, cannot read property standard of undefined. Interesting. What is happening? So rate is undefined. Let's actually just then x console.log x, see what happens. 401, authentication required, please pass a valid API key header in your request. Yeah, that's because we need to actually give the head, it needs credentials here. So we still have some work to do in our test. Let me close this for a while and have a look. So I'm gonna paste this in. I'm gonna just grab this here to help us have it side by side. Go back to the test. I'm gonna paste this in here while we work. If you have a big screen, unlike me, who is doing a YouTube channel, you can just split your editor side by side. That's very handy when doing unit testing to keep the tests here and your reference code here. But either way, this is going to be passed here as an options object. We're gonna call it ops at least. And we expect headers we expect opts to have headers, and we expect that to have an API key property, and we expect that to be key 1, 2, 3. So what is key 1, 2, 3? Well, here's the thing. We also, because this uses process here, we now have another dependency. And we need to create a fake process as well and pass that in. So functions tend to have multiple dependencies. And that has an n, which in turn has that API key, which in turn should be key 1, 2, 3. So let's actually pull up the terminal again, toggle terminal, and hang on, run all tests. Cannot read property headers of undefined. Yeah, because opt, first of all, it's not getting any opts. Let's remove this. Let's actually fix that first. So order total, will now pass in some options here. See what happens. Cannot read property API key of undefined. Yeah, sure, because it wants a headers. Boom, we get a new problem here. Yeah, key 123 received undefined. Let's actually just API key, and then I'm gonna write the hard code the key here. So it's key 123. Start faking it. But we can't hard code values like this. So we're going to proceed with we're actually gonna pass in process here. This is the process object. We inject that. Now this will break all other tests. So let's actually disable everything but this for now. Going back. And cannot read property country of undefined. Hang on, what is confusing me here a little bit? Yeah, we actually have to pass in the fake process, otherwise the argument order is incorrect. Fake process, cool. Calls that API correctly, it's green, but that's because we have a fake value here. We're gonna use the actual value from process. Process env, what was it again? Hang on, going back to the test. It's that API key. Oops. And it is green, cool. Let's just change this. Just make sure that it breaks correctly. Yep. Awesome. We're gonna remove the only, and then we're gonna see that, oh, all the other tests fail. So that's because they don't have a process object. Because these don't use the fetch, we can just pass null in here as well. They don't make use of these test cases. So just gonna do null, and we have 5 passed. So now it actually uses the correct that API key. So let's try this again. Let's try this again. Cannot read property country of undefined. No, okay, of course we need to pass in the process in the sandbox as well. That way. All right, cool. Yeah, we cannot read property standard of undefined. Let's see what is happening here. Let's check this again. X happening console.log x. See. Oh my god. Bad request. What's bad about it? So it was because I had ran out of credits. I refreshed them again. Note to self, don't use a throttle API for tutorials. Cool, so let me remove this console log and go back to the sandbox. Finally it works, awesome. All right, cool, so we wrote some tests that completed the whole response chain and the parsing of the response, and then we also verified that our mocks, our assumptions about the fake reality that we created actually corresponded to reality by running our code in the sandbox, and it seems like it's working. That calls for celebration, and by celebration I mean a commit. Oh, there's changes in the package.json. Yeah, I just indented some code. Let's keep that separate. The sandbox also got some changes. Let's actually commit that as well. And script MD, we don't want that. That's my script notes. And I want to remove the package.json there because it was just that was just some indentation, and we want to keep those in a separate commit. I don't like putting spelling fixes and stuff like that, baking them into a commit. I kind of want to do them separately. We fixed response test. Ugh. Commit messages are important, but not that important. Well, they are. I think they're really important, but this is not a tutorial about good commit messages. Anywho, let's still do this derailment and fixed indentation issue. I know I'm being inconsistent here, but anyway, let's see. So this is what we added here. Some nice new response parsing. We have some duplication here that we will eventually fix. We looked at the we extended our fake fetch here by checking that it used the API key that is also passed through fake process. And it's also, we also checked that it used the rate here from the fake VAT API to calculate the output result. This thing here, this is actually now redundant because, you know, since we're checking the output, which is completely dependent on fake fetch actually being called, otherwise it wouldn't work, this thing is just completely superfluous. So we're gonna remove that. No longer needed. There. And we can also remove these curly brackets. We don't need them anymore. Let's actually make sure that the tests are still running. Dunk 5 passed. So let me commit that. Removed redundant superfluous checks. I feel like this injection here results in extra code. If we were not unit testing this and requiring this thing here, it would that would mean that order total could just have required this on its own inside of itself. It feels like the injection mechanism adds a little bit of extra code, and extra code, it makes me feel... Yes, it's a little bit extra code, but it's not a lot. It's pretty nice. It's pretty clear what is happening here. We're requiring a fetch, we're passing it in. It's very easy to follow how the injection happens, processes here. I mean, there are other ways we could achieve it. We could use some kind of messing around with globals and stuff like that, but it wouldn't really be easier to follow. It might save us a little bit of code, but it would still, it feels like it would be more brittle. I like this because it's extremely straightforward what is happening. Jest does have an ability to override requires. So if we used fetch inside, like the require inside of order total, we could use that, but we would still have the problem with process, which is a global variable. So we would have to like mess around with that global. One advantage with this is that it makes all dependency mocking behave in the same way, which I think is pretty nice. And I think that's a good point to end this episode. It's getting kind of long. If you have any questions, confusions, or wonderings, or suggestions on where we should go next, just post a question down below in the comment field, or if you are a patron, you can post it in the Fun forum. There's a link in the episode description for a topic dedicated to discussing just this episode. You have just watched an episode of Fun Function. I release these every Monday morning, 0800 GMT. If you are watching from the future, you can check out next week's episode here. And if you're watching from the present, you can click here to subscribe so that you don't miss that episode. You can also turn on notifications in the YouTube app if you're forgetful. I am MPJ. Until next Monday morning, stay curious.